Tony. Right lately, as we're recording this, there's a lot of hot button issues going on that have crossed over from the Confederate flag being taken down and from Capitol buildings up to game companies stop no longer distributing Civil War themed games, which reminded me of earlier in this year when we had in my own gaming group when we had a very tense moments concerning the Indiana Freedom of Religion Bill, which for all Gen Con people probably were heard more than they wanted to about that. But it also spelled possible destruction of my gaming group with how diverse opinions there were about this. So, Mike, what I'm turning to you guys for is sage advice when you have people, even just individuals who are by nature explosive, whether they're not quite sure if you trust them on rules or if they're just powder kegs in and of themselves, or if it's political, religions, hot button issues, or if it's just they don't respond well and think you should kill off their character when they do things that deserves getting the character killed off. How do you keep the game fun?
Well, I think that this goes into a kind of broader topic specifically for GMing and everything, which is how does a GM kind of roll with the punches as they come up, either during just the minutia of gameplay or during the larger, how does the world affect my game? So there are kind of, I think, two ways or two topics here. One is kind of, how people can, how to deal with things that come up via your players, that sort of thing, and also the other one, how does in-game stuff can kind of throw you and how do you deal with that? So I think today is probably in regards to your question about the player portion. So I guess the first thing is what causes that sort of tension at the table, right? It can be something as major as, the politics of the world you live in are changing, which has an effect on you. Or it can be some guy cut me off on the way home from work today. All of those things are going to get brought to the gaming table, whether you think they are or not. So I think the first big thing that you can probably think about is to just always be kind of loose with your plans to adapt to that sort of thing. I know that's real general, but that's probably a good place to start.
I think when it comes to stuff, there's an old saying, I'm not going to say it quite right, where in polite conversation, you never talk about religion or politics. It's just not polite to kind of talk about those things among people who aren't, your family or you're extremely close with, because those two things will set people off faster than a gaslight explosion. So I guess as a GM, your primary responsibility is, if you're going to have those characters that are, racists or, religious zealots or even just not religious zealots, but someone who's religious and that's just their character, you got to remember to approach it as that's that character and you're playing it for that character, and not to use it as a podium to spew things at your players. No one gives a shit what your religious beliefs or political beliefs are. I mean, just quite frankly, no one wants to hear you spew rhetoric at them when they're trying to play a game and have fun. So that's the difference between, hey guys, there's this character, he's, very religious, and playing him like that is totally fine. But the second where someone at the table says, wow, that guy's crazy, or I don't agree with that, and then you jump down their throat, or you snap at them because that's what you really believe in, it's a muddy territory. So quite frankly, it's probably best not to walk down that path if you can help it. Or if you do, you should go in with, this isn't what I believe. I don't hate elves. Elves are great, but this guy's an elf racist. It's very muddy territory. So I think as a GM at least, you need to keep that in mind and don't spew rhetoric. That is not the place. The internet is a perfect place to yell at people who you don't like. Not at your game table and your friends.
I think that one of the easiest ways to kind of roll with that is to say, this character is, as opposed to, internalizing that and being that person, really accentuate this character, Bob the blacksmith in this town, this guy that you met, he is doing this, on the GM side. And if your players start getting into it, you can quickly find yourself with players arguing, but go, what does your character say? What is your character saying about this? What is your character doing? Put the focus on those fictional characters, as opposed to letting people take it and make it about real things.
Yeah.
We are playing a fake game.
Exactly. A lot of times I think it devolves into it's not Rob and Tony's character who are having an in-game problem. It's suddenly turned to Rob is screaming at Tony over whether gay people should be allowed to vote or whatever. You know what I mean? And that is not good. That is not. There's no place for that among friends. I mean, you can vehemently disagree with people and still be friends with them, folks. And
look at Professor X and Magneto. They hate each other's guts, but they are best friends.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, just because I'm playing, and that's the hardest part for a GM is when players play those characters that are against the norm or of a certain type, and you have a lot less control over what a player is going to do, unfortunately. And I guess if it is uncomfortable, you may have to take them aside and talk about it out of character as a group. This is making us uncomfortable. Maybe we want to go a different direction. And if everyone's not adult enough to do that, maybe you need to rethink your spot in life, I guess. But I mean, that said, there's no reason that I can't play, the white redneck who hates, all people of other diversities and I hate gay people and stuff, and not believe that. I mean, by no means do I believe that personally. That doesn't necessarily mean I can't play a character about that. I mean, it have very interesting, like Gran Torino with that's a great movie where he sort of has that prejudice, from the war and everything, and then learns to overcome it throughout the story. Like that's a great character arc, and
Absolutely.
It's just something that you talk to your players and GM or vice versa about beforehand or as you're doing it, so everyone knows that you're telling a story and you're not condoning someone's actions. You're not vilifying it. It's part of the story, and that's what it should be about, is having fun, telling a story, killing some monsters usually is always a good time. That's how you gotta come in and approach it, and if it gets anything beyond that, everyone just needs to take a step back, take a breather, and remember why you're there, and that these people are your friends, regardless of what they think about the world at whole that we really can't change too terribly much sitting around a game table in the first place.
Now, that whole part about talking with your players and managing things around the table, I think is a great segue into a lot of that player table relationship management thing. We actually just had a bit of an experience with this in our last vampire session, where we kind of had to put the game on pause because
we really did, yeah.
It was a very big character thing. It wasn't a personal thing by any means, but what happened was we got to a spot in our vampire game where Josh's character Lucas was facing some serious moral dilemmas. He's sinking slowly away from his humanity. He has these opportunities in front of him where he can jump out and seize power, and I think there was a little bit of miscommunication, probably on both sides of the table. Rob's GMing, and I think you made a couple assumptions that maybe were, I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong thing here.
No, I definitely made some assumptions, and I thought I based them on some past experiences, but that's the problem with assumptions. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
I think the unfortunate part is when you GM, though, you kind of have to sometimes, because you kind of have to make those educated guesses about where you think your players want to go so that you can plan your adventure ahead of time. So there is kind of that risk, but this is potentially what happens. But we got to a part where Rob presented Josh with some choices, and Josh turned away from him and was just like, no. And Rob was like, well, I'm kind of screwed now. I really don't know what to do with your character in this story. And we kind of took, like, I don't know, maybe like a 30-minute, 45-minute break where we were just sitting and we go, okay, what's going on? What do we need to do to get the game back on track? We talked to Josh. We said, do you not like your character anymore? Is this a thing where, we want to kill Lucas off, or he wants to leave the story and we'll play someone new because it's not interesting anymore?
And I mean, I had no problem with him not going down a certain 2 or 3 paths, but I just didn't know what paths to send him down at that point.
Yeah.
when he kind of turned away from it. And yeah, I literally stopped and was like, Josh, I need some fucking help from you right at this point. And I think Josh didn't even really know what he wanted with Lucas right then. It was a lot of bad things that happened in character, and everything just sort of shitstormed at the same time.
Now, the good thing is, through talking about it and kind of, getting a couple things out in the open about, I don't know if I know what Lucas wants to do, or, where he's kind of lost and everything. I came to a point where I said, okay, well, my character can drop some science on you, and, at the end of that scene, we can see how you feel about it. If it's that, because Josh was like, I'm on the edge of a fence and I don't know which way I want to go. So we said that's great. So I said, after the scene, we'll play it out. If you feel like that's the tip you need one way to go that path, great. If not, then we'll figure something else out. So we played the scene, and at the end of it, Josh was like, that was just what I needed. That was, I get it now. Lucas was in a weird place in his head, and he needed someone in character to lay it out, on the table for him. And we didn't have that previously, but that was a very positive experience of a problem and a resolution around the table. And it came through talking, and there were a couple of points where it was a little awkward, maybe, or a little uncomfortable, where we're stopping our game to discuss a problem, and it's weird, right? No one wants to do that.
It was nothing between like me and Josh or anything. Like, he wasn't mad at me, I wasn't mad at him. It wasn't that sort of thing, but it was just the story had just kind of come to a halt for me, and I was just I as the storyteller was totally lost, and that's not a place where I should ever be. And I quite literally reached out to Josh and then to Tony, and Tony threw me a life preserver and got me back on the boat that I was captaining. So I mean, he just said the right thing to Josh, to Lucas in character, and it was enough for Josh as a player be like, okay, I understand why everyone has been acting this way around Luke. I understand everyone else's point of view because he hadn't seen it before, or Luke hadn't seen it before in character, or and the scene was perfect. I thought it was so great, and it got everything back where it should. Josh felt happier about it. I felt so much more relieved, and I mean, there is nothing wrong with turning to your players, or especially your GM, and being like, I'm unhappy, or I am so unsure about this. I want to make sure it's going to be okay.
I'm struggling with character decisions or what I want to do. GMs live for that stuff because they want to make a story for you. They want to put you on a super cool path to see you, have great adventures. So to say that stuff to them, that's what GMs want. So don't be afraid of it. But that was just a situation that was resolved very well, I thought, which could have been terrible. Rob could have just pushed on without stopping anything and saying, what should we do here? And Josh, I'm sure, would have lost interest or just not cared, or Rob would have just, been like, okay, well, I guess you're just a tag along to the other characters in this story, which is not what Josh wants to be. He's a PC, he's not an NPC. So it was a great positive example of how things can come out. Now, there are other things that can happen around the table too. We start with the positive before delving into some negative things. I think that when you bring certain personality types around a table, it can get tricky to navigate, shall we say. there, everyone knows there's all sorts of personalities. There's the people who are loud and don't care and just whatever. I'll say what I want because who gives a shit? And there
Do
are the
we know
people.
anyone like that? I don't know anyone like
Maybe,
that.
you know. And then there are the people who are quiet and reserved, and maybe they have good ideas, but they're afraid to voice them, or they think that they can, or they're slow to voice them, so they get talked over and feel like they're ignored sometimes. There are people who are just their characters 100%, and they live and breathe that thing. Ron was one of those guys who was just Kellen Langolier 100% all the time, every time,
You can,
which was great.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, but he played Kellen exactly as Kellen gonna be, good or ill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, there are people who sometimes aren't ready for that level of gameplay and stuff, but that's kind of where you have to navigate some of those waters. I mean, again, we'll harken back in Threat Detected to the Sith Wizard session, right? I mean, that was a huge situation where, a whole lot of that role-playing stuff came to a head. And, Garrett, I thought that it was a very positive resolution again, but in a different way, where you said, we need to think about this, so I am literally going to stop the game from going any further. You said, that's it, we're going to break for tonight. I'm going to think about this, and you came out to everyone involved, and we made it through in a positive way. I guess a big thing is just don't force things when they shouldn't be. If you're starting to feel that friction, that tension, that unsure, on the GM side too, it's okay to stop the game and go, okay, guys, I didn't plan for this. I need to think about this some more. We'll meet next week.
If you make a dragon, you guys are gonna go fight a dragon, and you look over and like one of your players looks like they're miserable, maybe you need to stop and be like, hey, are you all right? And if they're like, dude, I don't want to fight dragons, I don't have anything to care about it, it's boring, I didn't want this, that there are so many options to fix it. And I think one of the big problems is that people come into games with different expectations. And
yes,
not everyone has the same expectation, and even especially the GM, you can't read minds. You don't know what people's expectations are unless you ask them beforehand. So I'll use Dark Heresy because I'm playing in the Tuesday group. Just came to my head, oh, I want to play Dark Heresy where you play in the Inquisition. Well, if one player wants to do talky, social, investigative side of Dark Heresy, and another one wants to murder everything with chain swords and shotguns, they have very different expectations of what Dark Heresy, which is a game that does both of those things quite well, is going to want to see. And it's if you get all of one thing and none of the other, it can cause conflict with people. People are not having fun.
No. Oh, go ahead, Garrett, please.
I was going closer to there. I had a weird scenario. How about the surprises? Because I always play characters where my characters have surprise discoveries that are, let's call it party destructive. Let's say that you're playing a dwarf who's got a problem with greed, and you're with the party, encounter drow, and now the drow are enslaving other species, and you expect kind of most of the party to go out there and go, wow, that's pretty lame. I don't like the drow doing that. And that your dwarf character has the realization, this is it. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we enslaving the elves and making them work in our mountain? And he suddenly got a plan of how to redo the mountain's economics that way. That's gonna not go off well, especially with the elf PC and stuff. How as GM would you handle that?
Good question.
I'm gonna tell a story.
Go ahead.
In my Tuesday group, I was not GMing. I was playing. It was D&D game, and we were in the Underdark. I was kind of like a monster campaign, a little bit. We were not very good. I played a kobold. The one character was an orc, and the other one was like a fairy, but like an evil pixie fairy. But we were working for this jerk wizard, and basically the orc character was like, I'm gonna screw this guy over. You know, we're gonna work for him and do what we have to, but I'm gonna screw this guy over. We're gonna kill him eventually, and we're gonna take his stuff. And, you know, everyone was like, oh yeah, we're all right on that. Well, one of the other players decided that he wanted to work for Wizard Guy, and he basically screwed us over and ratted out the Orc player's plan. And the Wizard was very high leveled. We didn't realize it, but natural consequences killed the Orc player. Totally killed them, like one shot. I was smart enough to, you know, like wipe up his ashes and get him resurrected, because that's the thing in Dungeons and Dragons. But after that point, you know, GM stopped, and we basically had to retire the fairy's character who betrayed us as an NPC bad guy. We basically were like, dude, we were very upset at the time. It was quite a confrontational moment, especially the Orcs player, who was quite upset that this guy basically fucked over the party. Yeah, we didn't make him, I guess, but he rolled a new character, and we kept going in a different direction after that. But yeah, sometimes even as a GM, there's only so much you can do other than telling. I don't know. Sometimes out of character, you are just a jerk. I mean, some players. I mean, I remember it was really, really lame. That happened, but at the same time, it's a really good memory now, I guess. Like, it's a good story after the fact. I don't know. It's a rough one. Sometimes you may just need to get rid of a character, quite frankly. I mean,
I'm kind of curious a little bit on your perspective, Garrett, because I feel like we had a lot of that in Threat Detected, if I'm going to be completely honest. We had quite a few characters who would go around cutting people's heads off and, you know, murdering and stuff. And, you know, I, as the Jedi, trying to be the Jedi of Jedis, had issues with that at some points, and I found myself trying to, maybe rightly or wrongly, I don't know, police some of the other PC's actions. I think that was in character in a large part, but for me, I think part of it was too. I was like, well, you know, come on, guys, we're better than that. We're working for Bail Organa. We gotta, you know, be higher, rise above, and everything. But I was kind of curious what you thought of some of those situations.
I thought that the confrontation between the party was the most interesting interactions in there, especially with a party that big. It's very interesting. However, I mean, the more polarized any party gets in gaming or real life, the less fun it is. And then, by that point that you guys were like that, were so powerful, all of you, that there's no way I could bring in somebody, a bounty hunter or something, to police you or to claim justice or revenge without them getting their butt kicked no matter what, without it being a completely broken encounter where it's not very obvious of what I'm doing. So once we kind of went down that far, there was no way out except for you guys from within.
I was just gonna say, I remember when I first started, I got Tull, and I was like, oh, he's this shockboxer guy, and he's probably a real asshole. You know, he did a lot of bad stuff and everything, and I was like, I'm gonna play him a little bit more, you know, not evil, but definitely like gray-leaning black kind of tendencies or whatever. And then I encountered the like malicious evil that some of our dear friends concocted. And it made me play Tull an entirely different way, to the point where he ends up at the end of everything. And Tull was pretty much right next to Tor for most of the campaign, being a good guy. And it's funny that I would have never gone that route if everyone else had been like super awesome, stand up, good justice guys. Then I would have been the standout, you know, interesting, like, oh, I don't know, you know, he's not evil, but whatever. But just because of his situation, Tull became who he was. So I know it's just interesting that other people do affect your character more than you think.
It's interesting you say that. There's two things I want to touch on. One, it's really funny that you say that, Rob, because that's exactly what happened to Josh with our vampire game.
That is exactly what happened. You're
yeah,
totally right.
because Josh, when we started, said, I want to, I think I'm going to play, douchebag Ventru guy who's just going to be a bit of a smarmy asshole and, kind of screw people over when it suits him and everything. And my character was pretty much the most monstrous monster you could ever do. I was eating people left and right, just killing just to
Murdering people.
I mean,
murdering people.
Tossing bodies in dumpsters like they were used
awful.
trash. Horrible.
Awful.
Josh face checked that and was like, oh my god, I can't be bad guy because this guy's super bad. And he was kind of like, well, now I have to be more reserved and I have to like fight the darkness and stuff. So it's very interesting you said that, Rob, because it made me think of that. Secondly, Garrett, you mentioned the party kind of polarizing a bit, and we've talked a lot before about our party size and threat detected and how big it got and some of the detriments to that. But you mentioned that, and I think that in this case, having a bigger party was not a terrible thing, because if you have, 3 or 4 people, and one or two of them decide to be bad and one or two of them decide to be good, you're going to have a real clear rift between players, and they're going to butt heads, and it's probably going to be tough. When you have 8, 9, 10 people, and you have like 2 that are bad and 2 that are really good, and then everyone else is kind of somewhere on that scale in between, there's less of a polarization, because the people in the middle can kind of tilt back and forth between the two.
It dilutes the acid.
Yes, it's interesting. I never really thought about that before. There are so many times where I've thought about our 10 plus player size and been like, man, that was rough in a lot of ways sometimes. But that now that I think about it, probably helped with some of those things when we were in those heavy, role playing. Oh my God, who's good, who's bad, what are we doing kind of moments. So it's interesting. I never had that thought before.
Thinking just of the Sith Wizard scene, I mean, it's also those people were caught in the middle of all that and were about to become casualties if the rift couldn't be brought into some kind of balance.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
We made the comment a lot that Threat Detective was that game that had like absolutely everything in it as far as tabletop gaming, like.
It's true.
Every stereotype of gaming that you could think of, every like great thing, every like bad thing that could kind of happen, they all happen at one point or another during Threat Detective.
I love Threat Detective with all my heart.
Me as well.
We did not have inter-party dating.
That's true. That's every other game we've played.
That's the only thing I don't think we had.
Well, Tour had a bromance. We'll
that's true.
Well, I was talking like players,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Lauren did attend quite a bit.
Well, me and Tony have a bromance, so we'll slide it in.
So a lot of what we've talked about is role-playing wise, character-wise, those sorts of problems that can kind of mess up the table a little bit. What about when like the player themselves is the problem? What about that dark side of role-playing where like there is a person
as that guy?
Yes. We may have had situations in games where, a guy comes in and wants to play the game, but his way of playing the game is to always make sure his dice rolled, 19s or 20s. People who want to abuse the rules of the game to make it suit them. They want to win Star Wars. They want to win World of Darkness, whatever you're playing. How do you handle those kinds of things?
As tactfully as possible.
Yes.
It is such a hard thing to decide. Basically, there's 2 sides to it. Either it's really annoying or makes you mad, but it's not so bad that you can't put up with it and let them play, or it is so bad and maybe you have to ask them to leave. That's kind of my opinion of it. There's really one or the other. It's something that you can try to ask them to change, and it's not so bad that you can put up with it, and everyone just kind of grumbles and deals with it, or it's something that maybe the group needs to get together and decide that that one person's fun in quotes is not worth everyone else's enjoyment and happiness.
Yeah.
As mean as that kind of sounds, I guess. I don't know. It's sort of.
I guess very similar to what you just said. I think that the goal of any role-playing game or any board gaming group or whatever is for everyone to have fun. So if one person is jeopardizing the fun of everyone else, there's a problem. If people are showing up to the game or leaving from the game and they are just like, ugh, that was not fun, there's a problem. And it kind of sucks sometimes because as the GM, you are the de facto leader, and it falls on you to take care of a lot of that stuff because you're
really
captain, right?
Yeah, right. What really sucks is when those people are your friends and they don't mean to, but just how they play or even their lack of, caring, I guess. When 3 out of 4 people are really into character stuff, and the other guy's like, well, I just want to talk about pop culture and kill dragons or whatever, that can be unenjoyable too, even though they don't mean to do that. And it's a real slippery slope, especially with people who are your friends in real life, and you don't want to jeopardize that over some dice. But,
when I was running Dungeons and Dragons Encounters in my group, I had let's call him a politician rules lawyer, in that he thought he had perfect builds for everything, perfect powers, perfect situations, and wanted to tell everybody what they should be taking, what they should be building, what spell they should be casting, where they should be moving on the board for maximum advantage to everything, whether he knew or just thought he knew what the best thing was.
Yeah, no one likes a backseat game.
One of the players who was friends with him asked him to kind of cut that, stop that, put that back. And the guy was like, why wouldn't everybody want to be perfect? Why wouldn't everybody want maximum effectiveness? And he pretty much just handed in his sheets and walked and never came back, which I thought was a shame because the guy who his friend handled it very well. But that kind of thing is when it does infringe on everybody's fun and you're kind of waiting for him to do something like that, then no, something needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that this kind of issue is probably the most dangerous in terms of actual consequences of any that you will face in gaming. I mean, if a character or something happens in game or whatever, it's just the game. When these are people that you interact with in real life, when they're your friends, when you have to deal with that stuff, there can be real world consequences to this fake game that we play. And it is a delicate thing. You have to tread cautiously when you're trying to do some of that stuff.
I'll say that the way you don't handle it is by being petty, is by intentionally fucking over that guy's character in game, doing this like behind the scenes, bullshit where you get back at them by hurting their character and just that.
Totally
that is
terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Don't do that. You are an adult, or if you're not, you will be someday. Turn to your friend, turn to this person who is another human being, and talk to them like one.
No.
That is the first, last, only way that you can really handle these situations, or should.
I will also say that you should not turn to that person and talk to them in front of the rest of the table.
I agree.
That just breeds confrontation and instantly puts that person on the defensive. Wait till after the game. Wait till 5 days from if you play every other week, talk to them a week later, something like that. So that has nothing to do with the game itself as it's currently sets, but just one-on-one, just be like, hey man, we're having some issues. I've noticed that you kind of have been doing this sort of thing. What's the deal with that? And no one likes to be just confronted with, hey, you suck, leave.
You're right, though. That happens, too.
Absolutely. So I think that you know, as unfortunate as it is, we occasionally have to employ our real world skills.
You
And
have to make a real life persuasion check.
yeah, and it's just it's one of those things where you just got to be delicate and be nice and be patient. Imagine that if you were in that guy's shoes and someone came up to you and said, "Hey, we're having a problem with the game, and it's because of some of your things." How would you want to be approached by that? If it's one of those things where you just go, "Oh my God, I didn't realize what I was doing," you don't want the person to come up to you and go, "Hey, you're a problem." You want to go, "Hey, that is what's going on. I noticed you've been doing this thing. Oh my God, I didn't even realize. Maybe I can help out. Tell me when I'm doing it so I know. I'm sure that most people who probably do a lot of these things don't know that they're doing it or don't realize that it's affecting other people's fun. So be gentle, be nice. Be friendly.
And
We want to be known as a community of good, friendly people.
yeah, and that like your guy that left your group, Garrett. I mean, you're totally right. That is a shame. That's really a shame. I guess the only hope is that maybe they go on and they find another group of people that meshes better with them. There are plenty of groups that are oh, power, awesome. We can do the best build and have the best combat and do the best stuff. There's a lot of people like that out there, and in another group, he's not going to be, that guy. He's going to be one of the guys, and they're going to have fun, and it's not going to be the kind of gaming that, you or I would do necessarily, but that doesn't mean it's not fun for them. That doesn't mean they aren't having a good time, and I guess there's the hope that eventually likes, congregate to like, and everyone ends up having a good time. I know it doesn't always happen that way, but one can dream.
Yes, they can.
Exactly.
So any closing thoughts about handling explosive situations within the gaming group?
I think that most remote controls have a pause button on it for a reason, and there's no reason that your game can't. If things are going too fast for you, you don't think you have a handle on them, you just need some time to think, stop the session, say we'll pick it up next week, or even if it's just like, let's stop it for half hour, I need to think about some things, or let's talk for a minute. Nothing wrong with that. I think some bad decisions are probably made because people are trying to rush or make those hasty things. You don't have to worry about it. Everyone wants to have fun. Relax, pause the game, think about it.
And Rob?
I guess I just say that talking, it's just like Tony said, keep an open dialogue, players, GMs, friends to friends. Don't let the real world get you down, man. Let the fun world you're building reign, just keep calm and keep going on, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that I want to add to it is if you do any rules or house rules to account for this, like you suspect someone of fudging dice rolls, it doesn't just get applied to the person you're suspecting. It's everybody rolls in the open and doesn't touch the dice until the GM.
We're only as fast as our
what the
slowest car.
Exactly.
So don't signal anybody out. So thank you guys for helping me with this, and we will talk to you guys in a couple more weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty.
Thank you,
Always
Garrett.
a pleasure. Yep.